Welcome, everyone. My name is Joe Adams. I'm a U.S. immigration lawyer. I conduct immigration webinars from time to time to inform people about hot topics in immigration, the latest trends from USCIS and Department of State. But recently, Nadia Davari and I came to know one another. Nadia is a top-notch, big law and independent entertainment lawyer. And we realized there are so many people out there who understand a little bit about immigration and a little bit about entertainment. And we thought, hey, why don't we put on a little informal presentation? What's an entertainment lawyer? When do you need one? What do they do? And how does entertainment law and immigration law interact? Because that's really where Nadia and I came to know one another. So Nadia, if you could give a little bit of background as to yourself, like where'd you grow up, where'd you go to school, and how did you end up in this very interesting practice?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Joe. And it's always a pleasure to learn more about immigration issues from you. So as you mentioned, I'm an entertainment lawyer. I do only the agreements. I don't do any litigation. I don't go to court or any of that. But when people are in this area of, this industry and they have their agreements, which is, you think of entertainment law, it's a very it has a vast scope. So it's, it runs all the way from your IP, right? Securing your rights to the IP, which is intellectual property. Whatever project you're going to work on, you're going to create what we call IP. So it starts from the inception all the way to the time that you are wanting to show that end product to the public at large. Now, I said it in a very broad way. That could be TV, that could be television, movies, that could be a book, that could be an animated project, that could be a scripted project, unscripted, documentary, game, even influencers who are creating content, right? And getting paid for it. And then that also encompasses people who want to use that IP for their own business or for, to put a piece of music in their film or even put a piece of music to the content they created on Instagram. We never think about that, right? That's a whole nother separate issue that is not really relevant here. But as you know, entertainment business is a global industry. And it's the language of art, speaks across cultures, and it crosses that barrier. So as you well know also, we have a lot of people who are in the industry from around the world who come to the US, which is where the intersection of entertainment and immigration happens. I have during the course of my career have worked with many immigration attorneys because those issues come up all the time. Even when I was in a big studio, big production company, we would have international productions, or we would have a star that is from a different country and wanted to come here. So what do? Or there were production companies from abroad who wanted to come and make movies here. So you're doing the, visas for the entire company. How does the company have the right to even work here, right? Or start a business here? So because of the nature of this entertainment, it becomes a global, endeavor, which, whether you like it or not, is gonna happen, cross immigration law issues. And you asked me about my background.
Yeah.
So I'm a Southern California girl. I've been here almost all my life in West Los Angeles, and I'm very attached to it. When I applied to college, I didn't even apply outside of LA. Truth be told, I only applied to UCLA and Berkeley, and I turned down Berkeley to go to UCLA. So, and then after that for law school, again, I only applied to 3 schools, UCLA, USC, and a backup Loyola. So
Do you come from like a family of lawyers, or are you the first lawyer in your family?
that's a really good question. Most people in my family are in science. They're either doctors or engineers, or they're in business. They're self-employed and they're business and trade and all sorts of other things. Real estate, a lot of people in real estate. And I had one cousin who was a lawyer, and he was the only one. But after I went to law school, now we have a few lawyers in my family. I have 2 cousins, 2 sisters, first cousins who both became lawyers. I have another cousin. Yeah. So after I did it, it kind of, I think it broke the barrier.
Right. And did you always know that you wanted to pursue entertainment law? Entertainment law is such a LA and New York kind of practice. It sounds to me like you were really headed towards entertainment law from the beginning.
I was very perceptive. So I was a science major at UCLA, hardcore science major, and I had a 180-degree change. I went to law, but when I was at USC is a big entertainment
Of
school,
course.
right?
Yeah.
The film school, and then the business school, and then the law school. You know, we had clinics, and UCLA and USC both. But I would even on some level argue more so USC. Um, so I, because I was coming from a science background, I wasn't really into the traditional like litigating and evidence and procedure and all that. I was
Sure.
thinking, my brain was more like conceptual. How do I make things happen? How do I create things? How do I make things better? How do I make a deal? How do I make this project go? And entertainment was very much like that. It was completely my personality, right? It was a big part of my job. I feel like entertainment lawyers, especially, you have a long-term relationship with them, and you see people's careers just blossom. And
Yeah. It's the same with
um,
immigration.
same with immigration,
Yeah.
right? It's very hands-on, it's very personal. Of course, you could be working in a big company, then you have a project that you're working on, you're like giving birth to this movie, right? Yes, the creatives are creating it, but if the support of the lawyers in the back office wasn't there, it really couldn't happen. I can emphasize the importance of law and not ignoring that. I've lectured on multiple times at the USC Film School to the creatives, and at UCLA, and even Southwestern. So, people who are in the creative world, they don't want to deal with lawyers. Lawyers are just, they're going to make things hard and they're expensive. And then they just take so long. But there's a reason where you have legions of lawyers working for all these entertainment companies, right?
Sure.
There
Yeah.
must be providing a value. There must be a reason. And you don't really get to know it until something goes wrong.
Right. Right.
And I have many stories I can tell you, especially people who first start. I find that is most difficult with them, but clients that I have who are in the business, it's a no-brainer. They just ask me, how do I do this? How do I protect myself? And that's that. But people who first start, oh, this is just my friend. Like this is my favorite phrase. This is my college buddy. We're just working on this project. We're all friends. They're just gonna come by. We're gonna shoot this scene and we're gonna do this. And there was a TV show that went on for 5 seasons. That's like hitting the jackpot lottery, right? And
Sure.
that's your dream in TV, to go into multiple seasons, go into syndication, and you're set for life. So this particular show was created by these 2 guys who were college grads, and they were like, super creative, smart, sweet guys who, spent all their time reading and reading and reading, funny people. And they had an office in the back of the studio in this production company where I worked, and they would just churn out creative ideas. And every once in a while, they pop into my office. I'd go with them and, have coffee. And I'm like, guys, what are you doing? Who are these people coming in, working on these projects that you're doing and filming them around and whatever? And lo and behold, that project made it big time, right? And became a very successful show. I won't say the name, but everybody would know it if I said it. And they were cut out of it because there was no paperwork
Yeah.
with the talent. And then the big studios, big agencies got involved. And when that happens, they take over. So even what the whole point of this story is, I can go on with more stories. This is not the only time, is that don't take it for granted, right? Don't take it for granted that, oh, this is my friend, somebody I know, but we have so many things we're working on and we're working with like multiple things. We can't just stop and do a contract for each one of them. So maybe you just do a master contract, right? With somebody you're partnering up with. Or, if there's some shows that you feel like it has something going, you just pause because you just don't know, how it's going to turn out.
Well,
And you will regret it.
Nadia, the question that I have is, say, for instance, I was a young filmmaker in the UK or an established filmmaker in India, and I've just been kind of going along and along, and suddenly I find myself in the United States, and I'm pitching projects and creating work. What's the first thing I should do to protect my intellectual property?
Excellent question. Copyright. You want to copyright it. You really need to copyright it.
Isn't copyright automatic as a matter of law? Just by writing something down, photographing something, videoing something,
Yes.
is that enough?
No.
Okay. Why not?
Because when you register with the copyright, and sometimes people want to register it with the WGA, and that doesn't do anything for you. It has to.
Can't I just mail it to myself with a stamp on it?
No, when you do it through the U.S. Copyright Office, you have certain bundle of rights that come with it. For example, if anybody infringes upon it, you get attorney fees back. They have to pay back for your attorney fees. And if you show your registration number, automatically it's a done deal.
So if I write my genius novel and I put it in a drawer and maybe I show it to some friends, is that enough to get me the protection of copyright law? Because what if my friend steals my idea?
Okay. So let's put it this way. If you have a great idea, you've written this great script, right? And you're going around town pitching it, right? And you pitch it and somebody does a show just like it. And imagine it's a big studio, it's a behemoth, right? And then you're going to go against them. Yeah, you wrote it. The moment you put pen to paper, you fix an idea into a medium, right? Physical medium. You're absolutely right. Copyright law applies and you have the copyright. But if this big, huge company then goes and makes this show without your involvement or your approval or compensating you, but they got the idea because of what you were saying to them, how are you going to go sue that big company? You want to
get the fee Are you saying that the fee shifting provisions of copyright law make it easier for like contingency lawyers to litigate those cases as compared to if you don't register the copyright, there's no attorney fee shifting?
Also, when you have that registration, as soon as you send it, you say, hey, look, it's registered. You can't argue with that. Whereas if it's just that but we've heard this idea before, other people have told us about it, it's really not yours, it's somebody else, we heard it before and we changed it, and by coincidence is similar. But now you have a date of registration, you have a registration number, and you get attorney fees. There is no debating that. For example, same thing with if somebody uses a piece of art you made or a cover of something that you created and you had copyrighted it, right? And then somebody on Amazon is selling it and you want to send a takeout notice, if you just say that I have it, it's very becomes difficult. But as soon as you put the copyright registration number, immediately they take it down.
Nadia, Vanessa has a question, which I think is very relevant to what we're talking about. She asks, can you copyright a treatment or pitch, or must it only be the full screenplay? What is copyrightable?
Very good question. So you can copyright a list of ingredients, for example, or an idea. And I get this question all the time. But if it's a fleshed out treatment, yes, fleshed out deck that you created the I mean, even if you didn't create portions of it, you can register the portions of it that you have created. Yes, absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
what if I created my work, say my screenplay, what if I created my screenplay in Canada, but now I'm seeking to produce it in the US? Is my copyrighted idea still valid in Canada, or does it work internationally, or is it only one country at a time?
So that's a good question. Depends on whether those countries are part of the convention. And then if it's not been published already, but you're now in the US and you want to copyright it, it's fine. Right.
What's
And
the convention you're talking about?
the countries that belong to the copyright convention.
Oh,
So
right, the copyright convention. Okay, so
like China is not part of it, right?
right. So they can copyright infringers are just sort of Wild West style in
Same thing with trademark. So if you have a trademark in another country and they're part of the convention, then you can date it back to that original trademark that was filed in one of those countries that have a relationship with the United States. Or if you do it in the US and then you want to do it elsewhere and secure it in other territories, you can use the date that was originally trademarked here and then relate it back.
You know, in the news right now, the Writers Guild of America has just gone on strike. There are a lot of people on the Zoom that are not from a U.S. legal tradition, not from a U.S. Entertainment tradition. Can you speak to the power of the unions, and what is this strike about, and does it affect your job?
So it's definitely slowed down the business. And as you may have noticed, every like about 8 to 10 years, there's a strike with the writers, and the writers usually tend to be the first to go when there's a strike, and then sometimes, usually the other guilds follow. And if you just bird eye view, if you just step back and you think of it like what's going on, it's like every time there's a change or shift in new technologies, there's a strike, because then new income streams come about, and then new creative ways not to pay the writers for those new rights. Then there was the streamers, right? We had an entire shift that from home box office that videos just became obsolete, right? And now then theater going, there's no more theaters. It's almost obsolete, not completely, but somewhat. And now you have, these new ways that people are getting monetized, right? And they're not getting a piece of it. The writers are not getting a piece of it. So that's why they're striking. And now you have AI too. So is AI created material copyrightable? It went all the way up, and there were decisions, I'm sure you're aware of this, decisions where came down that if AI generates materials is not copyrightable, right? Only the portions that a human tells it to do become copyrightable. So the big debate is, are writers going to be out of a job now? Is it that you're going to have AI generated content?
Let me go back to something you had said earlier, because you were talking about this scenario that you see over and over again, where a bunch of people are just kind of getting together, and we're all friends, and we're not planning to make any money off this project, or if we do, we'll all behave civilly to each other and divide it up fairly. Does that ever work? What happens in real life? You're shaking your head no.
Honestly, I've never seen it work.
What happens if say you and I start writing a soundtrack to a movie? You and I are both film composers, and you and I start writing a soundtrack to a movie. And then our friend comes in and hears us and makes a few suggestions about some notes to change or some lyrics to change. It's a 2-hour score, but our friend just, has us change a few bars of music. Does our friend get anything,
So that's a whole nother animal. Now you're going to the music world, right? Completely different area. So now you're talking about the writer shares and publishing and who's the owner of the song. And this happens. And even the person who produces the music, right, is putting it all together and kind of changing the sounds and all of that. Even they you can arguably say that they're part of the writing team, right? So you usually have, with these songs, you have like an addendum, an exhibit on the back where it says this percent of it was written by this percent of it was written by that person, this percent of it was written by this person. And we're talking about lyrics and the music, right? So you just have multiple writers. That one's easy one to deal with. And then you say, well, this person only wrote 1% of the song or 0.5% of the song. Or, we incorporate their ideas. They had like a little, beat there that they suggested, and then they change a couple of bars here or there. So, okay, we'll give them 1%. So they get 1% of the writer's share of the publishing.
Okay. I want to talk, something that's been in the news a lot lately is this idea that pretty soon we're going to see AI generated content, and the content will relate to people who are deceased or who are not willing participants in the publication. For instance, there's a YouTuber out there who has a mask, a digital mask that makes him look identical to Tom Cruise, and he goes around and does his sort of.
You talk about deep fake.
Yeah, a deep
almost
fake.
deep fake. I had this question come up. I had a referral, actually another attorney who is making a movie, and his producer called me, and they said that I don't want to get political here, but one of our former presidents, they were going to make a movie about one of our former presidents and use deep fake to have him behave in a certain way, which would be very consistent with his personality. I think you just guessed. While the idea was appealing on some very, on some multiple levels, the reality is that you can't do that. You have a case for publicity rights and defamation, right? So if I know, of course, truth is always a defense, but this is obviously, almost a parody. But then you go into the fair use world, and then it's very murky. So you just want to stay away from that, and get the rights and the blessing. Like, think of Weird Al Yankovic, all those songs he was parodying. He was always getting the rights from those people, where he had an argument that was fair use, because he was, it was parody, right? There was no way of you mistaken that this is somebody else's, song that he's just spoofing. So all of that to say that, no, you should not do that. You can walk into a lawsuit, because especially with something like deep fake.
You mentioned rights of publicity. Is that something that is a California thing, or is that nationwide, or is that international?
So, very good question. I'm a California lawyer, so I can mostly speak to California law, but there's similar laws in other states too, right? But we're the hub of entertainment in California, right? And what you said in the beginning, that entertainment law is LA and New York, I would argue it's mainly Ninth Circuit, Los Angeles, right? This is where we have all the laws developed for this area. And in fact, we have our own arbitration set up through the Independent Film Alliance, IFTA, where most people opt for that. So you have an entertainment lawyer with a lot of experience looking at the conflict to make the decision, right? So I always opt for that. So most often I opt for that in the agreements that I draft. So having said all of those things, it usually comes up in LA, right? Because you're talking about celebrity. It comes up everywhere, but mainly in LA, you're talking about the celebrities and their publicity rights or individuals, right? So, but as you mentioned, there's similar laws in different places.
So the bottom line is try to get the rights if you can. Don't rely on the doctrine of fair use. For people who don't know, fair use is a defense to copyright infringement, but my understanding is that the law of fair use is incredibly vague, and you don't get a result until you're way down and you've spent tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers in federal court. That's the exclusive place where copyright gets litigated. And then if you have to appeal, you appeal to the Ninth Circuit that Nadia mentioned. Very, very expensive. So the better solution is to work with a qualified entertainment lawyer, get it all documented ahead of time, get everyone on the same page.
And no deep fake.
No deep fakes, no cowboy approaches. You know, there are a lot of what we call guerrilla filmmakers out there. What do you think about that? The idea that people will just go out, no permit, no license, they just go out and start shooting.
You know, this is brilliant. I feel like you can come and practice entertainment law with me.
I always say I am entertainment adjacent. So I will be sort of on the periphery of the deal. I will usually scold the producers and executive producers for not engaging me early, because what happens in the crossover between entertainment and immigration, people, you know, when you're producing a film of any size, that is a circus that you are well, what's the better metaphor is, it's the plane that you're flying as you're building. You know, every film production I've ever seen, as sophisticated or as novice as they are, it's always a learning curve with the filmmakers, because
something always comes up.
Something always goes wrong.
Something always comes up. To make a movie, even if the movie is not successful, and I know there are filmmakers on this Zoom call, and they should chime in. It is a monumental task, even if whether the movie makes it big or doesn't make it, just the process of making it, rounding all the troops, keeping all the moving pieces together, dealing with all the personalities, all the, you brought up some of the issues, the permits and the locations and the clearances. Oh, you can't have that building behind you on screen. You need to get their permission. You can't have Capitol Records in a big shot. Did you get their permission? You can't have a picture of Coke there. That's product placement. I mean, did you ask them? Do you have the right? Or can't wear a Gucci shirt with Gucci plastered everywhere, right? So, yes, it's kind of the same way on social media too. So, for example, you see people posting on Instagram or on their and they put this music on it, right? And doesn't it make you wonder, do you have the right to use that music in conjunction with the content that you put on your Instagram?
Yeah, so, well, and are you monetizing that content? Because this comes up in the immigration context over and over. And I've had many tearful conversations with people who have just been turned around at LAX, which I'm pointing at right now. I can see the tower from here. The people who've been turned around and sent home because on their social media, they've talked about how they plan to work in the United States, and work is performing services for compensation or the expectation of compensation. So you have social media influencers who don't realize, or maybe think
you're telling the whole world
that they're working. And I have a situation right now where a young lady's business manager, LA-based business manager, pushed publish on sponsored content, and the sponsored content was geotagged to Los Angeles, and she had to go. They let her in on a tourist visa, but she had to go spend several hours in secondary inspection at LAX, all because I'm obviously not going to mention who, but the business manager as a talent agent wasn't really thinking through the immigration issues. One story, Nadia, that I think it really summarizes like the overlap between our fields. Okay, this is one of my only IMDb credits. I got a special thanks for this one, and it was a movie that was a total bomb at the end. So I'm going to just cut to the chase. The movie was a dud. Anyone who put money into it lost money. You've never heard of it. I'm not going to say the name. But here's you know this story of like filmmaking chaos and the interaction of immigration. So it's say it's July 2015. The executive producer of a low budget film, passion project, low budget film. The executive producer is going to put in $1 million of her own money because this is her dream to make this film come to life. She gets the rest of the film financing. So she's put up $1 million of her own money. She has financing from a traditional entertainment financer for the rest of the production budget. The other $9 million. But the only reason that the financing company was putting in the rest of the money was because a A-list, very well-known, household name kind of actress was going to play the female lead in the movie.
Filmmaking 101.
What's that?
Filmmaking 101.
Filmmaking 101. Okay, so she's put so you've got a passionate person who has put in her life savings to this movie. She's got the rest of the money because a very well-known household name actress is going to be playing the female lead. For scale, the actress is on board too. But the actress had one condition, that her on-screen father is played by a particular Oscar-winning household name British actor. And the British actor's only condition was that his wife played a supporting role in the film. She's also British. So July 2015, the executive producers come to me and they say, here's the situation. We need household name female lead. She needs British husband and wife. And I lay out the plan. We need to start working on this right away. We need to use the expedited service. And I think there's a comfortable margin in here to say that by fall, we should have this all sorted. Well, you know, they don't want to spend the money. They're not ready to pull the trigger, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 2 weeks from the commencement of filming, they haven't hired me. They haven't done anything for the immigration for these two, for this British couple. So in the 11th hour, they come to me and they say, you know, Joe, can you make it work? And I say, no, I don't think it's going to work, because you've got government processing times and embassy turnarounds, and anyone who's ever talked to me on this call knows that I can't give precise timings, that there are variables between the commencement of work and visa in hand. Bottom line, this all came down to hours of time and literally sending runners throughout the streets of London to get a piece of paper into the actor's hand because he didn't have a printer at home to print the thing that he needed for the embassy, and everything went like that. But if literally any part of we were able to pull a rabbit out of the hat, but if that hadn't happened, if he hadn't been, and in fact they ended up switching up the shooting schedule. He was only to be on location for 2 weeks, and they changed his first scene so that all he had to do was sit in an audience and be in the background, basically so that he could sleep off his jet lag. So we made it work. It was my first special thanks to credit on any film. The film did not do well. I don't know that anyone made their money back, but it would have been even worse if it would
have been $10 million down to 2.
Well, right, because the rest of the financing wouldn't be there, and I guess it would have just lingered on, and people's schedules book up months in advance. So it's a
I'm not sure what it is that they wait till the last minute and they don't think that they need. I haven't figured that out. Um, Another part that I find that is a lot of people are very interested in this business, right? Everybody, right?
it sounds sexy. Entertainment law. What do people may not know exactly what you do, but it sounds like sexy.
Right. And everybody's also attracted to the entertainment business, and everybody wants to be in the movies or on the red carpet, whatever. By the way, I've been on the red carpet. It's hard work with clients. You have to look perfect. You have to do this. You have to do that. Kudos to them. So people come in from other areas where they're very successful, and they think that, well, what's there to worry about here, right? I can do this too, right? And it's not quite the same. I don't think like that about somebody else's area of law or business. I don't think I can do immigration law. I would never even dream of it, right? Or I would never walk into a surgery room and endeavor to cut into someone's leg because I'm a good lawyer, right?
Well, and I think some of the people on this call I know are lawyers from different legal traditions. And at least in the United States, we have a very balkanized legal practice. We go to law school in the US, we get an undergraduate degree. Nadia went to UCLA, I went to UC San Diego, proud University of California people. And then we go to law school. Law school is always 3 years. The first year is always the same for everyone. And then people start to pick electives that specialize. I didn't end up in immigration law right away. I was litigating state court cases and federal court cases. I had a right of publicity case under Civil Code 3344. So that case was an interesting one, and it's kind of like one of my only war stories about people not planning well. So you had a bunch of college students at San Diego State University, a photographer, an aspiring model, and an aspiring fashion designer. They said, let's all get together. You, fashion model, wear my clothes. It was a bikini, swimwear. And you, photographer, take the photos. And and then we'll just go our separate ways. It'll help everyone's portfolios out. A year or so later, the photograph of the model in the swimwear shows up in an adult film company or adult bookstore ad in the yellow. People don't remember the yellow pages, but in the actual physical yellow pages in the phone directory. But it's her photo. It's clearly her in the swimwear. It was from this photo shoot. The photographer had
There was no release. No rights had been licensed.
Photo to the lingerie, to the adult bookstore, and she, if you want to appear on behalf of adult bookstore, good for you. But she didn't want that. She didn't want that for her career. So we ended up in a big lawsuit. How
did she finance that lawsuit?
Well, unknown to me, because I didn't represent her. I represented the photographer in the case who had sold the photos. But this was not a copyright case in federal court. This was a civil case in California State Court, the Superior Court of San Diego. But it's this right of publicity, and she was entitled at least to a minimum amount of damages. And I think there was a fee shifting provision that a contingency lawyer would have liked. For people who are on the call who don't know what I'm talking about with respect to fee shifting, in most countries, if you sue someone and lose, you've got to pay that person's lawyer fees. That's what's called I think that's called the English rule or the continental rule. In the American system, absent legislation, absent a court rule,
statutory provision or contractual,
the default is you bear your own attorney's fees. And lawsuits easily are $50, $100, $150,000 just in the lawyer's fees. More. And then add the court reporter, the court fees, the filing fees. the witness fees, the jury fees, add all that, and you're easily at $250,000 in just the lawsuit fees. So if you get sued in California, or anywhere in the U.S., absent a contractual or statutory provisions, Nadia said, you're going to end up, even if you win in court, you end up spending a lot of money on your lawyer fees, even if you completely.
That's why you want to register your copyright and trademark.
So, the fee shifting provision basically said that if the fashion model had won the case, then the judge gets to make the other side pay her fees, but that's unusual. It's a change from the default rule.
Because we're California, and right of publicity and defamation and entertainment law issue related laws are very robust, right? The Ninth Circuit, which is the appellate court that kind of makes the decisions from California and Western states, sets the precedent for the rest of the country and arguably the rest of the world. Even when I do agreements with foreign entities like a UK based company or a Belgium based company or even a Saudi based company or in the Middle East or even in China, all those agreements that I've ever done, I put in California law. Or I put international arbitration using California law.
Right. So if there's a dispute, rather than go to court, you go to a private arbitrator, and your preference, Nadia, is to go to an arbitrator who is based in Los Angeles, who understands entertainment law because it's so different. The norms, the practices are so different, right?
And it's very jargon based. And I have done deals. I mean, this is absolutely no disrespect. I would not want to do an immigration case. I would not want to do I don't know, a divorce case. I wouldn't know. I mean, all my respect to or securities laws, I would not dream of touching that, right?
Yeah.
So entertainment is very jargon based, and it's very incestuous. Like, people know each other, and what may appear wishy-washy to a traditional transactional corporate lawyer is just how this business gets done, right? And if you push certain things too much, you'll kill the deal. I mean, I have no other way of putting it. And we have specific verbiage that you're gonna look at it and you're like, what the heck does this even mean? Right? It's not even regular English.
Right. Well, immigration is very jargon based as well. I see that we're at 10:45 right now, Pacific time, and I want to keep this to an hour. But if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat box, and Nadia and I will answer your entertainment and immigration related questions. Tattery, you said, let's see. Quick question, but even if someone publishes a picture of myself anywhere, if they don't have a release with my signature, they cannot use it for right, or if they use it, they need to pay me, right? That's a good question.
That's a really good question. So the photographer who takes the photo owns the photo, right? But what they do with it depends on, were you in a public space and they took a picture of you in a public spot, or are they using your image like your photographer did to make money in a in a book that is for advertising, right? So the facts of it make a difference.
Right.
It depends on where, how, for what purpose.
Right, and you're right in publicity might change state by state, and then we get into an area we call conflict of laws, don't we? Which is the bane of every law student's existence.
Right, which is why you have that provision in the agreements that you pick California law and that you have arbitration in California. But generally speaking, you are correct. Somebody who took your picture and now is trying to use it to monetize, they can't, but they are the owner of that photo because they took that photo.
So if I walk down Hollywood Boulevard, which is like a mile that way. If I'm walking down Hollywood Boulevard in the rain and I walk past a camera crew and that camera crew picks me up walking past and that ends up in their television show, can I sue that company?
So,
Is that not a
good
good
point.
idea?
Brilliant question. So if you ever do that, or if you go into a hotel lobby and they're doing a lot of filming, right? Or you go by any location, you will see signs posted, big large signs that says, by you being in this area, you give your consent to appear on this.
So so you see these signs from, you know, especially here in LA where a lot of reality shows get filmed, or like quote unquote reality.
Their licenses, they put there that, you know, by virtue of if you're a background person and they know you're going to be there, they make you sign one, which you probably will be on camera more. But if you're just passing by, they usually have the signs everywhere, you know, like, you are warned, we are filming, you know, filming is in process, you know, be aware.
So you can give your consent to be filmed even if you haven't signed anything. Maybe you didn't even see the sign, but it's been posted. You should have been able to see it.
Yeah, it's usually posted
is,
in multiple places
yeah,
in a conspicuous way.
yeah. Well, that's really interesting. If anyone has any other questions, now's the time. Nadia.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So as I mentioned, I work with a lot of companies who hire people, or foreign companies that want to come here and make movies or TV projects, whatever it may be, and they don't have the right to work here. So what's the process? At what point should they come to you? And how much lead time do they need? So two separate questions: for an individual that they want to hire, and for a company that is a foreign company that is bringing on the producers and individuals that are part of the company. So, and the other issue I'm going to add is that sometimes, as you well know, putting a project together is so wishy-washy, right? You just don't know who's going to be the person who's going to end up in the final project. So we might have a list of like actors we're going to go to, but you need that, I'm just guessing, whatever lead time you need, that might change, right? That person may drop out or not become available. So how do you do that? What is your advice to a producer or a filmmaker, and in turn to me, so I can relay that to my clients?
A few thoughts there. One, I mean, I preach the doctrine, I preach the gospel of start early. And even if starting early doesn't mean hiring an immigration lawyer, but just getting some basic information. You know, the typical visa category that we file for artists and entertainers is what's called an O1 visa. An O1 visa pivots on showing that the person has a high level of ability. And so the producer may not necessarily have all the credits, press, awards information, letters of recommendation that the talent would have, right? So if a producer is looking to hire foreign talent, that producer needs to, number one, be very aware of what that person's immigration situation is. Two, be working with that person to at least identify what evidence they're going to present. Because even with a great job offer, that's not enough. If a producer wants to offer a person, you know, a tremendous wage as an actor, producer, editor, etc., that's fine. But that offer by itself is not going to carry the day. The petition that we submit to the Immigration Service is mostly about the person's past achievements, which a producer may not know anything about or may only have a glimmer of. The other thing that I would say on the talent side, and I see this happen too many times to count, and it always leads to bad outcomes. Never, never, never misrepresent your immigration status to anyone who is in a position to make a decision. Certainly, you never misrepresent your immigration status to an immigration officer, to an embassy official. That's immigration fraud. That gets you barred for life. But if you misrepresent your immigration status to an employer or potential employer as Nadia said, this is a very small world. You know, Los Angeles is a big city, but we all kind of know each other. And if you misrepresent your immigration status, I see this happen all the time. People come into the U.S. on tourist visas or visa waivers, ESTAs, and they fudge things. They say they have their work permit. They say they have their green card to a casting director or producer. That is a death sentence for your career. Don't do it. Kateri had a follow-up question, which I think would be a good way to continue. Oops, I hit the wrong button. All right. How can I be the owner of the picture as a model or actress when I do a photo shoot? So Kateri is an actress and a model. The photographer owns the copyright to the photo. How does she get the right to the photo?
Brilliant question. Brilliant question. So you hire that person, and you pay them for their services.
Do you have to do it in writing, or can it just be a verbal agreement?
You want to do it in writing, and there's specific language, legalese that you need to have. Special, if you're in the US, you need to have specific wording in that. You know that, Joe. It work for hire language.
The work for hire doctrine, yeah. So
yeah, and then other things too, moral rights and lending rights and all of those things as well.
You know, we separately from my law practice, I helped run a nonprofit organization, an all volunteer driven organization. We hired we had a volunteer person design our logo and our website. By default, wouldn't that person own the copyright to the website and to the logo? So we just did a one-pager relinquishment of his copyright so that the company owns, so that the nonprofit organization owns the thing.
If you like, I will take a look at it.
Yeah.
It would need to be a little longer than one page.
Fair enough. It was. I think I just pulled it from the internet because maybe I should have.
You're doing what we're preaching. Although you're an attorney,
the nonprofit organization. We don't. You know, we're on a budget. But I think to wrap up, Nadia, I think, you know, and I'll send a copy of this video to everyone who registered with Nadia's contact information in it. I think for, you know, to sum up, what are the key points you want people to take away when they're thinking about pursuing an entertainment career in the US? How do they protect themselves the best?
Don't be afraid of lawyers. Don't think that, oh, they're going to be expensive, they're going to be this, they're going to be that. Just speak with a few different ones and see which one you know, you feel comfortable with, just like you would shop for a doctor, a dentist, or any other professional, right? Or anything for that matter, right? So that'll be number one. Number two, I would recommend that you don't try and outsmart the law. You don't try and say, oh, we're just going to do this, we're going to do that. Oh, don't worry about it. And I'm not saying that because I'm a lawyer. I'm saying that because it oftentimes law winds up protecting you. So you're better off having it work for you. So the reason those are there is because they've been anticipating the issues that will come up. Those laws and those precedents come up because of somebody else's experience, right? So anticipating things that will come up only makes your life easier. So you can either think of it as, you know, Persians have a saying, they say, it's better to have a scuffle in the beginning than a big war at the end.
Sure. I think that's a good sentiment to close on. I'll send an email out to everyone who registered with Nadia's info on it and a recording of the video later today. Nadia Davari, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Joe, for having me. This has been very wonderful and informative for me as well.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right. Take care, everyone.